Milky fans, it is MelkStehul here. I hope you are well wherever it is you are in the world. In this very special video, and fair warning, I don't want you people giving me thumbs down for not telling you what's coming ahead in this video. So if you don't like long, boring videos about where this game is headed, which is what this video is about, don't watch. I don't want your thumbs down. I don't want you come in here expecting some magical video about gameplay or Seal Land 30 or anything like that. This is a strategy discussion about where this game is headed in terms of development. And I'm basically going to be using the skills that I've acquired in my profession to work that out, to break this game down. And if you're all wondering what I do, which I'm sure you are, you'll probably think I'm an accountant because I'm always about the value, using the spreadsheets, making it kind of fancy. I'm not an accountant. Let's get that out there. I am a business consultant by trade. And what that specifically means is, I know that sounds kind of ambiguous. What do you mean business consultant? Well, I help solve business problems. Again, super ambiguous statement. What do you mean you help solve business problems? Like union problems, sanitation problems? No. Nothing like that. Nothing to do with people or anything to do with the mafia. Although I do know people. Not in this country, but if you're in Southeast Asia, I know people. And if you have sanitation needs, or you have sanitation disposal problems, let's just say I know people. But leaving that aside, that's super dodgy. What I do on a day-to-day basis for the majority of time throughout the year is I help CEOs and their leadership team think through the problems that they probably don't have enough time to think about. And I guess that's probably the best way to describe it at a generic level. To be more specific, let me tell you about some of maybe the last 5 problems I've worked on, just to give you a better flavor for what it is that I specifically do and therefore what skills I've acquired throughout that time. And I've been in this job for about 10 years. So the last 10 problems. The current problem I'm working for has to do with a bank. And so they're looking at reducing costs. So that's one problem that I'm working on right now. A problem that I worked on this year was that there was an Indonesian, let's call it entity, and they were considering bidding for a particular right to distribute a product for a multinational oil and gas company within the local market. So the question was, I got asked there was, well, firstly, should we do it? And so that involved going to things like, how big's the market? Is it growing? Who should we target? What's our call list? Things like that. Then problems I've worked on, I guess before that, there was a piece for a bread manufacturer, which I worked on a while ago. Probably one of the first few things I worked on in my career. And the bread manufacturer, the question was actually quite interesting. It was basically, where do I build bread factories for the next 20 years? And so it's not that easy. And one of the more recent, within the last 3 years, more fun projects I've worked on is basically what they call strategy. I don't know what to do with my business. Please tell me, should I expand? Should I close certain parts of the business? What should I think about? How do I grow this business or not grow this business? Where should I be putting my hard-earned capital? So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. I advise CEOs on basically strategic issues. And so if I take that lens to the game Idle Heroes that we all love for now, and think about what it means for their future, this is the conclusion I came up with. And it'd be interesting to see if you guys actually agree with that conclusion. So in the world of gaming, there are effectively 2 types of games. And I'm talking about the bookends, right? So there are games that are what I call finite games. And these games have obviously a bound ending because it's either a story or there are a series of tasks that you have to complete, and when you complete those tasks, it's over. Primarily, these are story-based games. So things like games like Final Fantasy, Resident Evil, even the Fallout, if you play Fallout games, and I suppose if you only play the campaign modes in say, Call of Duty, and you don't play with the multiplayer online gaming part, then those games, obviously, they have a finite history. So once you've completed the task or the story, that's it, game over. you can try and complete it again, and maybe there are different paths in the story, but largely there's a finite path to the game and has a limited shelf life. The other type of game is what I call, at the other end of the spectrum, is what I call community-generated experience games. And so these are the games I'm talking about, like Fortnite, Call of Duty, the PvP part. What's the one with the cops and you storm things? Rainbow Six. Rainbow Six Siege. So games like that, or even Counter-Strike, which was a very early community-generated experience type game. That's at the other end of the spectrum. And obviously in the middle, you've got these hybrid games of PvP and PvE. So games like Call of Duty, StarCraft, you could argue, had a story component as well as a PvP component. And obviously that PvP component has continued on. And Idle Heroes probably falls into the middle. But really, what keeps the game going is probably the PvP aspect. And I'm going to say, for the most part, if I had to say where Idle Heroes sort of ranked, it's probably more a community-generated experience game, if you're looking at the gaming spectrum, than it is a finite game. I think people tend to focus more on the PvP than the PvE, right? Because the PvE, how much do you really have? How much content do you really have in there to keep going? So I'm going to say, largely, Idle Heroes is a community-generated experience game, right? And so if you subscribe to the fact that Idle Heroes is probably closer to this end of the spectrum than this end of the spectrum, then the question you have to ask yourself is, well, what's the key success factor for keeping this game going? Well, it's very simply, the users have to stay, right? If the users don't stay, then, well, we can't generate experiences for each other. You have no one to battle. It becomes a PvE type game, and PvE type games, as I've described, have a finite ending. And for a company like DH, they obviously gathered onto that fact that, yes, we have to keep users happy, because guess what? The longer the users stay, the more likely it is they are to spend, big or small. That's just a fact, right? So whether you're a dolphin and you only buy the monthly cards, or doing special events, or if you're a whale, you just can't be resisted buying stuff every single week. Or like me, somewhere between a whale and the dolphin, looking for value and just spending when there is value. Then the longer I stay and play this game, the more I'm going to spend. That's just the reality. There's not going to come a point where I'm going to be like, switch off and decide, you know what, I'm just going to stop spending. I mean, I'm sure some of you have managed to achieve that, but largely, the longer you stay, it's like a casino. The longer we keep you there. This game is exactly like a casino. What do I say? The longer you're inside, the more likely it is you are to spend. And so, if you believe it's a community-generated experience game more than anything, therefore, for it to succeed, users have to stay. So then the key question becomes after that, when you break it down, is, well, just how do I keep players in the game, right? Well, you have to meet two key player needs, in my opinion, to keep users in the game and playing. One, you have to not achieve an end state, meaning the users can't feel like they've gotten to the end of the game. And then you're probably saying, well, hang on, MelkStehul, you just said this is a community-generated experience game. There is no end state because, well, if players stay, we generate the experience for each other. That's not technically true. Before all the changes came along, guys, you got to keep in mind, before all the changes came along, there was a pseudo end state. So that was, when I talk about pseudo end state, what I mean by that is E3 players, there was no E5 back in the day, right? I'm talking about the highest stone being the Celestial Stone 6, and that was it. I'm talking about Guiletech being going only to the first phase or tranche of abilities. And now there's two stages of abilities, right? I'm talking about pets and them leveling out at 120. That was actually the finite, well, not a finite, but that was a pseudo end state that most people had actually hit. Furthermore, Aspen Dungeon, everyone had already achieved, I forget the level before the current level. So we're doing what? Death now? The level before death. It's been such a long time. Everyone had already more or less achieved that. Tower of Oblivion area, everyone still keep going, but there was a pseudo end state and a lot of people had basically hit that. But yeah, that's the first player need they have to meet. They have to keep the I guess the end state or the peg at the end of the road they have to keep moving it along. Because if people feel like, oh, I've already achieved everything there is to achieve. I've got, at least 10 E3 heroes. They've all been upgraded. I've got all the armor. There's really nothing else for me. I mean, as fun as it is, just keep swapping around my heroes and finding different combos to beat other players with. The reality is, once you get all that, the meta might shift here and there, but you can quickly adjust to it. There's really nothing to keep you coming back. So that's the first need they have to meet. The second need they have to meet is obviously, well, I've got to feel like I'm making progress. Okay, fine if there's no end state, or it's fine if you keep moving the yard posts for end state. If I feel like I'm not getting anywhere in the game, I'm going to stop playing. Because why the hell would you play a game where you feel like you're not making any progress? So it's a fine tension between having this end state that one that keep moving, so then it doesn't feel like you haven't achieved it. But then two, that you are progressing in the game. I feel like if I keep playing, I have a fighting chance. Those are the two needs that they need to meet, and that they have to hold in tension the whole time, right? So let's break that down even further. What do you mean when? What does it? So if we believe that these are the two player needs that they have to meet and they have to hold them in tension, just how do they go about meeting these needs? So let's go through each one of these independently. So how do we not make it feel like that the player has achieved an endpoint in the game, right? First thing to do, very easy for them, new heroes. And the reason why I say it's easy, so when I say it's easy or hard, when I talk about these particular elements of meeting the needs, when I talk about whether it's easy or hard, it refers to how hard it is from a programming perspective, because I have an IT background as well, which is quite sad. I actually have 3 degrees. But from a programming perspective, I talk about whether it's easy or hard. And when you do new heroes, it's actually quite easy, because all it is new artwork. Yeah, they got to muck around with their attributes and come up with some attributes that don't make the new hero super OP, unless it's like a light dark hero, in which case it's fine. You can make it OP as you want, because we've all saved up all the scrolls we need to get the OP hero. But effectively, every time they introduce new heroes, that's to keep the game fresh and make it not feel like people have achieved the end state. Because if they've never created new heroes, then I'm almost certain people would have the full lineup of all the powerful heroes by now. That it's kind of like, oh, I've got all the heroes in the game, or especially, well, all the good ones. It kind of feels like the end, right? So they keep inventing new heroes, but they have to be mindful of keeping that intention with progression. And I'll talk about what I mean by that. The other, at the bottom, where we talk about need to feel progression and how to keep that intention between not achieving end state. The other thing that they can easily do to extend the shelf life of the game is obviously, and this is super cheap and easy, right? And they've already done a lot of this. So they've increased the pet levels, increased attributes for the pet, the rune stones, Guard Tech. They've got the phase 2 level 2 Guard Tech stones. They've got the soul stones now. Soul stone 3 is the highest you can get, but you know what? They can make that soul stone level 6 anytime quite easily, right? A lot of people are going to get soul stone 3 like within the year, within 6 months, guaranteed. Yeah, 24 variations of soul stone slows you down, but people are going to hit that pretty soon, right? The other thing that they can do is obviously make, and they have done it, E3 to E5. And guess what? It's easy to make it to E7, E8, right? So that's easy as well. The other thing that they're also done is they've made level 2 skins, or the legendary skins, again, to extend the shelf life of the game. And these are all very easy things to do from a programming perspective. The one thing that's incredibly hard to do, and this is probably the only thing that will ever save this game and keep players going for the time being, it's inventing new game modes. This is actually incredibly hard to do to program, believe it or not. Relatively speaking, compared to creating new heroes, fucking around with the attributes, and making level 2 skins, the legendary skins. Coming up with new game modes is actually incredibly hard to do from a programming perspective, because you got to do like server matching, especially if you're introducing things like global PvP, which the developers did hint at or talk about. Or if you're coming up with new PvE modes, it's not necessarily that easy to do, right? So these are the things that they have done or could do to make it feel like the game has not achieved end state, to keep the game fresh and not stale. But then, like I said, they have to keep this need to not achieve end state, or creating a series, moving the goalposts the entire time with, you got to feel like you're progressing, right? Because if they just suddenly move the goalpost and that goalpost becomes near impossible to achieve over time, let's say, I don't know, Galtech, they made it so, and they nearly did it with Galtech, right? When the Galtech level 2 came out, people were like, whoa, what the fuck? They did the math. They did the math and realized, hang on, Galtech level 2 is going to take a fuck ton of Gald coins in order to max out all these. All right? And people were like, oof, I don't know about them. Fuck that. That's going to take forever. But as much as people complain, the reality is people are getting Gald coins and people are maxing out certain parts of these trees, or certainly making progress, right? So it's perfectly fine if you move the goalpost with these things, but you got to make it feel like people are progressing, right? So in achieving the attributes, that's why you've seen the current resource tweaks that they've made to the game in terms of what you get with a monthly card, what you get in the marketplace and what you can buy, even the daily quest. They've tweaked that a bit because they've moved the goalpost, but to make it feel like it's still achievable, they've had to tweak the attributes. And over time, what they're going to have to do as they merge more servers is they're going to actually have to give people in the later servers that come online more of a boost for them to catch up with people in the earlier servers, because eventually when they run out of players, active players, that's why they merge servers, guys. When they run out of active players, when they merge servers, they have to be on broadly equal footing. And in order for that to happen, the earlier players have to be put on this sort of pseudo accelerated path to get them to comparable levels to when there is a server merge. Because otherwise, if you merge servers with super senior players with kick-ass and very maxed out heroes compared with a newer server, those older players are just going to cream the newer players, and new players are going to be like, what the fuck, I'm not playing anymore. So that's why you see for the new players now, they give those booster packs. Like you get what you get starting out playing this game, I didn't get when I started out playing, right? And that's because they're trying to converge newer and older players. So then when server merge happens, there are no problems. But in terms of needing to feel progression, the other thing I wanted to say was, remember they have to keep making new heroes in tension with needing to feel progress. If they make too many heroes, if they keep constantly introducing new heroes, it's going to be near impossible to get enough copies of any hero because you make the hero pool just way too big. And so what they do is, that's why they've been doing the reworks, guys, because if you're an older player and you've been playing for about a year or so, and let's say you're sort of a dolphin or a free-to-play, the reality is, by the time, it'll take you about a year to stock up like 9 copies of a pretty decent hero, to enough copies to E5 that particular hero. And for you to save up all those 9 copies and then for them to change the meta all of a sudden, right? If they keep introducing new heroes, must-have heroes that just displace all the old heroes, people are going to be like, well, fuck that. There's no point. I'm never going to save up enough copies to get a hero that's any good in this game. And that's why they've done reworks, because rather than introduce new heroes, which people will take forever to get, to cater for the older players, right, who have managed to save up 9 copies, like Cthulhu recently, they've been giving him away like candy, right? And they've reworked him, or Michelle, or any other reworks really, right? The reason why they do the reworks is to cater for older players like that you just can't keep changing the meta of new heroes. You got to give enough time for people to save up those heroes, and when they saved up enough copies, they have to still be relevant. And that's why they've reworked the old heroes rather than just creating constantly new heroes. One reason, like I said, make it fair for the older players. But secondly, if you make that pool of heroes out there just way too big, like if they keep constantly introducing new heroes, it's just going to be near impossible to get enough copies of a hero that's any good to 9-star them. So you look at the odds in, for example, in the Elite Hero Shards, right? Which is here, right? Can you imagine what happens if they just keep introducing new heroes? The odds for getting just existing old good heroes would just keep decreasing over time. And that's just terrible. And yeah, you could argue, well, no, they can just fuck around the odds. they can make these useless heroes, well, you can give them a lesser chance of getting them, like with Ormus, there's a slightly lesser chance of getting him compared with Sigmund. And I'll just introduce a new hero. Yeah, you could do that, but if you introduce like 4 to 6 heroes a year, over enough time, you're going to have just way too many heroes for anyone to have any chance of getting anything decent. And so people won't feel like they've made progress, and therefore they'll quit. So doing this, they have to keep in tension by doing a lot of this, or giving feathers away more freely. So then people can get specific heroes, right? And so I think they're doing that with the gem boxes, and they might do that with other events going forward, because, again, you need to feel like you're making progress. If you make it way too hard for people to get copies, they're going to quit, like they have in my guild, right? So the very last guy that just quit, a Norwegian guy, Lynx, right? He's quit because he couldn't get copies. He had enough food, and he was like, well, MelkStehul, you stop making videos about food. I've got enough food. I just can't get copies. So I think he's quit because he felt like partly that he wasn't making any progress, right? So that's the thing that they do to keep. These are the things they do to make people feel like they are making progress. So what does that mean when you mix all this together? What's the so what, MelkStehul? What are we getting at? What's the future prediction? So here's my prediction for the future. If you believe the logic path that we've been through, right? Larger community generated experience games, so therefore users have to stay. In order for users to stay, they have to meet these player needs. And to meet these player needs, they either have been doing these things or got to do these kind of things. What does that mean for the future, right? You can see where we're headed, right? Again, this is a point that I've just been harping on for the last 3 minutes about. Less new heroes, in my opinion, or more ways to obtain those heroes. They're going to offer, for example, copies of top tier heroes in, say, Heroic Miracle far more often, or they're going to increase the drop rates in the scroll events or the Prophet Orb Summons event, right? That, or they're going to just rework less often. But like I said, the other thing that they're going to do in terms of game mode, my prediction, and they've already sort of kind of announced this, they said they were working on a global PvP type thing, which is kind of hard because to do a global PvP, you're effectively merging every single server. So I don't know how they're doing that without merging every server. And so then there's just one giant server, right? It'd be interesting to see how they do it. Like I said, from a programming perspective, that's actually really hard to do. The other thing that they're working on is a Celestial Island rework. So that's being touted. I don't know how far off that is. Again, that's not necessarily that easy to do. It would be very shitty if they just added more islands to it, but I could see them doing that, right? The other thing that they probably will do is introduce Seal Land 30, because a lot of people have already hit Seal Land 20. So it's like one of those cheap things. It's like here, it's very cheap to do, to just create Seal Land 30. And they probably have to do it to keep in tension with this, making people feel like they're making progress, because they probably want to make it easier for people to get more food as they introduce like new and more heroes, right? Or when they do something shitty like make E6 into an E8 levels. They said they would stop at E5, but I'm telling you now, bet bottom dollar they're BSing. There's no way they're going to stop at E5. Next year or the year after, bet my bottom dollar, E8 is coming, right? Especially if they open up Seal Land 30. The other things they're obviously going to do is Aspen dungeon levels, right? I don't know what comes beyond death. I've called it, oh my god, what the fuck level. So it'll be interesting to see what level title they come up with after death, because I know for a lot of us out there, they're like, well, fuck, I can't even get past level 20 on Aspen Dungeon. There's a guy on our guild that's basically finished Aspen Dungeon. I saw the lineup he had. He had a stack of E5 heroes. He's made it all the way, right? So if he's made it all the way, it's only a matter of time, especially with the soul stones that you can now get. It's only a matter of time before everyone makes it all the way to Death 100. And they're going to just come up with another level for that, because it's just super easy to do in terms of game modes. It's far easier to do these 3 game modes than it is to come up with a completely brand new game mode, because this is just fucking, it's just fucking around the attributes again. To do Seal Land 30, to do Aspen Dungeon, the next level, whatever the fuck that is, super easy. Like I said, E6 to E8, it's going to come. They said they were going to stop at E5. I think they're filthy liars. That's not true. The last thing they haven't touched is, surprisingly, if I was a betting man, I think this is where they're headed next. They're going to make some sort of new level 2 armor. So right now, the highest level armor you can get is class specific armor, right? I reckon they're going to fuck around with it, and there's going to be some new sort of power armor or level 2 class specific armor, because that's the next thing that they haven't fucked around with. But they fucked around with everything else, right? So they've messed around with pets, Galtech, stones, levels E3 to E5. There's only one thing they haven't touched, the armor. And given that they were bold enough to fuck around on the skins, I never knew that they could introduce legendary skins, but they did. So if they introduce that, I reckon armor upgrades, where you just sacrifice class armor sets on class armor sets to get like a power armor set, that's in the works as well. And that's easy to do, relatively speaking. So that's where this game is headed, right? Just a lot more of the same. Because like I said, inventing new game modes is supremely difficult. And so if you're not comfortable with that, I would just say quit right now. Because this is the development path. When you play it out, this is literally the development path. And this is all the levers they have to play with. Anyway, guys, that's the video. Thank you as always for watching. Like I said, this was a very esoteric, not esoteric, is it esoteric? Existential type discussion about where the game is headed. I hope you found it sort of useful or insightful. These are just my views. So it'd be interesting to see if you agree with any of this, and see how much of this actually plays out. Leave a comment in the link below if you think otherwise. I'm always interested to hear other people's opinions, as you've probably seen from my response to other people's comments, especially about the value packs. I'm all about feedback, right? I don't take offense to other points of view. I appreciate other points of view. I'm not a know-it-all, right? I'm trying to foster a sense of community. So if you guys believe that there are other ways to grow and keep this game interesting, and you disagree with what I've had to say, yeah, please shout out. I'm always interested in hearing your thoughts. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day.